Hello everyone, and welcome to a most exciting game from round 6 of the Grand Chess Tour's Your Next Move rapid tournament in Leuven. It's a game between Fabiano, Caruana and Shakhriyar, Mamedyarov. And it's a very exciting game because such a game could probably never happen in classical time format. So it's good to sometimes check out other formats as well. It's a really exciting game full of tactics, and I'm sure you'll love it. But before we get to that, of course, there is a photo challenge, and a lot of you have been complaining that the photo challenges are simply too easy. But the problem is not in the photos. The problem is in your vast knowledge. You simply know too much. But I have traveled to the darkest corners of the internet to find a photo that will be, well, I hope it will be difficult for you to identify. But then again, your knowledge is so vast, it's hard to say. So let's check it out. Who is this person? And you are not getting any hints in this one. So here it is. Who is this person? You all know him, but you know, that's the only hint you're gonna get. So best of luck to everyone, and we're gonna check out the standings after we check out this wonderful game. So Fabi has the white pieces, and he opens with e4. We have e5, knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5. The Ruy Lopez is on the board, and since this is a rapid tournament, it's very unlikely Mamedyarov would go for something like this. In classical time control, he goes for g6, the fianchetto defense to the Ruy Lopez. We have c3, a6 attacking the bishop, bishop to a4, and now bishop to g7. Adding defense to the e5 pawn. d4, e captures, c captures, and b5 now. Bishop to c2, we have d6, d5, knight to a5, we have castles, and already knight to c4. So this is definitely a position you will not see in classical time format. If the Ruy Lopez is played, the bishop is on g7, the knight is on c4, already there is pressure on the b2 pawn. So knight to c3, preventing knight or bishop from capturing on b2, knight to e7, bishop to d3, and now knight back to b6. We have a4, b4 now, attacking the knight, knight to e2, and now a5, solidifying that pawn. Knight e to d4, and here we have castles. Bishop to g5, bishop to d7, and queen to c2. You know, having more pressure on the c6 square, but also if the f pawn ever moves, then knight to c6 will also be an idea. And indeed, f6, attacking the bishop on g5, bishop to e3, and now f5 immediately. And Caruana does go for knight to e6. We have bishop captures, pawn captures, and now c5. And this pawn is like a very nice bone in Mamedyarov's throat. But if Mamedyarov can defend and you know, maybe go for some move the knight, play queen e7, and maybe attack this pawn with a knight, then it will surely be a clean pawn up for Mamedyarov. Rook a to d1, now comes f4, bishop has to move, bishop to c1, and knight to c6. We have bishop to b5, attacking the knight, knight to e5, and now it's not all that simple to find the move here. For example, if you capture, then you get bishop captures, and now this is a very nice structure for black. After bishop to c6, attacking the rook, rook to c8, and now bishop to d5, defending the pawn and also threatening e7. Black will capture, and after e captures on d5, black has this very nice c4 move, and white's pawn structure is very nice, but black's pawn structure on the queen side is much nicer. So after this knight to e5 move, Fabi doesn't capture, rather he plays b3, stops this c4 idea. We have queen to e7, now, you know, stopping this pawn on e6, also preparing maybe to capture it, of course, not immediately. You never want to place your queen and king on the same diagonal when this bishop to c4, although not possible now, could become possible. So immediately knight captures, bishop captures, and now bishop to c6, attacking the rook as in the previous variation. Rook to c8, bishop to d5, but now not capturing the knight as you don't have that very nice c4 move as a follow-up, so king to g7, simply getting out of the bishop's light square diagonal. Rook f to e1, queen to f6, and rook to d3. We have rook to c7, g3, g5, and queen to e2. King to h8, now comes a rook to f3, and queen to h6. And now you can see that white's pieces are really cramped in. It's very hard to find an active move for white. If you play something like queen to f1, maybe to prevent queen h3, and you don't want to allow rook f6, rook h6, then you immediately allow black to push this c4. And now black is already better. Black is threatening to push c3. If you capture, then knight can capture on a4. Very unpleasant position for white. So after this queen to h6 move, Fabi disregards Mamedyarov's threats on the king side, and he plays queen to b5 with an attack on this knight on b6. We have queen to h5, attacking the rook on f3, rook to d3, and now knight back to c8. We have rook to d2. Here Fabi is preparing bishop to b2 to trade bishops. Rook to g7, and now bishop to b2. G4. Bishop captures on e5 and queen captures on b5. There are no tricks with something like f3 because white can either defend immediately or even win the game via bishop captures on g7. And after king captures queen d7, white's attack will simply be much faster. e7 is coming, and after rook moves, queen to e6, threatening checkmate. And even after you stop this, and white captures, now the threat of checkmate will be dealt with by white checkmating black instead. So unfortunately no f3 ideas for Mamedyarov. Queen captures on e5, queen captures on a5, grabbing a nice clean pawn on the queen side, and now rook to g6. Again, f3 doesn't really do anything because you simply don't have time for this. White can, after f3, bishop c4, and if black even thinks about something like this, bishop to f1 will defend everything. So after queen captures on a5, rook to g6. We have queen to a6, rook to h6 now, and queen back to d3, bringing the queen back to the defense. F captures on g3, f captures on g3, and now rook to f3. Queen to a6, a very nice move by Fabi, attacking the knight on c8, and here Mamedyarov has to play knight to e7. He has to move the knight. But the problem with Fabi's position is not the position itself. Fabi is in a better position here, but the problem is he has like 10 or maybe even less, maybe 5 seconds on the clock, and he constantly has to make moves and enjoy that time increment. And here Mamedyarov plays rook captures on g3 with check. So he sacrifices the rook, and with only a couple of seconds on the clock, you can easily make a mistake here. For example, if you play something like h captures on g3, then you get queen captures with check. Rook blocks, then simply queen captures e1, queen blocks, and now rook to h1. King has to capture, and then you lose the queen and the game. On the other hand, after rook captures on g3, you could also make a very nice mistake by playing king to f1. Then black wins via rook to f6 check. Rook blocks, captures, and queen to f4 will be winning. After king moves, now rook to c3. There is very little defense against either queen captures on h2 or rook to c2. Both will be crushing. You can even allow a couple of checks here, and after king to h6, there are no more checks, and whatever move white makes doesn't really matter. Black will easily checkmate the white king. So very nice idea, rook to g3. It's not a good move, but with a couple of seconds on Fabi's clock, definitely worth a try. So king to h1. Fabi defends correctly. We have knight to e7. Now Mamedyarov has to move the knight, and now queen to a8 check. King moves and queen to e8. Again, with only a couple of seconds on the clock, Fabi makes the absolute best moves, now threatening to capture the knight, but also queen to f7 check in some variations. So queen to f6 check, preventing both, only move for Mamedyarov. And here we have e5, another excellent move by Fabi. Of course, you have to react to this. You have to capture the pawn. Pawn is captured, and here Fabi missed a very nice opportunity. Here he played bishop to a8, and bishop to a8 seems like a rather weird move to play in a critical position. But I caught a glimpse of the live coverage, and Yasser and Jovanka were joined by Russian grandmaster and also commentator for the Russian coverage, Evgenij Miroshnichenko, and his idea about bishop to a8 was that Fabi actually wanted to play bishop e4, but then he saw that rook to e3 wins immediately, because you will either capture and get checkmated via queen to f1, or you have to move the rook and then you simply lose this bishop on e4. So Fabi already touched the bishop, and then he had to move it somewhere, and he played bishop to a8. The problem is, of course, in classical format, Fabi would find this. Rook to f2 is beautiful for white. The idea is now, if you capture it, if queen captures on f2, then you get queen captures on e7. King moves, now bishop checks, king moves, and now queen to f7 with check. Queen captures, pawn captures, now you're threatening to promote the pawn, rook f6, but now h captures on g3, and with being a piece up, you're easily winning this game. So after this rook to f2, there's no way for it to actually capture the rook. You have to play rook captures on h2. Now you can't capture with the king because queen to h4 will be checkmate, but you have to play rook captures on h2. Now you get knight captures on d5, and after queen to f7 check, captures, captures, and captures. Currently you are 2 rooks against a knight and the rook, but black has a lot of pawns, but white can easily gobble up those pawns. Simply rook captures, the knight is attacked. After you figure this out, then rook captures on h7, and everything is well for white. Only 1 pawn in compensation for the exchange. That's no real compensation. So yeah, in this position, rook to f2, definitely a beautiful idea for Fabi, but he probably wanted to play bishop to e4 like Evgenij Miroshnichenko said, but he played bishop to a8. Here comes e4, a very nice idea. Rook to e3 was indeed the threat once again, but first Mamedyarov prepares it with e4. e4 is an excellent move because now the bishop is no longer guarding the king on this diagonal, so queen to f3 will definitely be an idea. Also, bishop cannot capture the pawn because of the same rook to e3 idea, and rook cannot capture, of course, because of the same queen f1 checkmate idea. So here, while panicking, Fabi did play rook to f2, but now rook to f2 doesn't work anymore because the bishop's diagonal is blocked. Here, Mamedyarov simply played rook captures on h2, and it's a forced checkmate. So after rook captures on h2, Fabi, with only a second or two on the clock, resigned the game, and a very nice victory for Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. Like I said, it's nice to get away from the classical time format from time to time. Although, in my opinion, the classical time format is the real format. So yeah, he resigned, of course, because after king captures, queen h4 is checkmate immediately. And if you don't capture with the king, if you capture with the rook, then again, it's no better. Simply queen f3 check. This is the idea behind the e4 move. The bishop is no longer protecting the king on this diagonal. So now you have to block, and then simply queen captures on g2. This will be checkmate. So yeah, after rook captures on h2, Fabi resigned, and let's check out the standings after the second day in Leuven. So these are the standings, and don't be spooked out by the score, as these are double points as they are scored for the entire Grand Chess Tour. So in first place, still Wesley So, who had an excellent day too. So far, he won 4 games and drew 2 games. Then in second place, Leuven Aronian, then Sergei Karyakin, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, Maxim Vashiel-Lagrave, Hikaru Nakamura, Alexander Grishuk, Vishwanathan Anand, Anish Giri, and Fabiano Caruana. Anand lost a very unfortunate game against Maxim Vashiel-Lagrave. He had a completely drawn endgame, and then he made one weird rook move, which was a complete blunder, and then Maxim, of course, took advantage of that. But yeah, it was a very nice, and I'm really enjoying the live coverage by the official commentators. So if you have time, like I always say, there are worse ways to spend your time. So yeah, that's it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon. Probably tomorrow morning with Game 5 of the Carlsen Anand World Chess Championship game. So yeah, thank you all, and I'll see you soon.